Are you a holy warrior or an unquiet dead? Are you blessed or are you cursed? Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we're going to be looking at Magic the Gathering. Yes, one of the biggest card games on the planet. This has been going for over 20 years. It's that big, hugely popular, hugely successful. And the thing about Magic the Gathering, when I was thinking how do I review this, because it's a big sprawling game, there are many cards. I thought the best way is to look at these, what I would call starter packs, if you like. These are sort of introduction packs to the game. And this one is called Blessed versus Cursed. So let's just see if Magic the Gathering really is magic. Magic the Gathering. Well, what is it all about? If you're into the fantasy genre and you're into card games and tabletop games, you probably will have heard of this. You may even have played it. It's not for everyone, but it is hugely popular. And ultimately, the way to describe it is it's a card deck building game, and they release hundreds and hundreds of cards each year. And basically, you build decks to combat another player or players, basically. You each play a planeswalker and you're casting spells to try and reduce somebody's life points to 0. That's the aim of the game, and that's what Magic is about. Now, because it's a trading card game, they release cards, loads and loads of cards each year, and it ultimately becomes like an arms race in some respects, because you can build your own decks, or what they've also done, the publishers, Wizard of the Coast, they've also created starter decks, or just decks that are pre-built. And if you're wondering, wow, Magic the Gathering, I've kind of looked at it and it looks really big, and how do I get involved with it? This, for me, is the best way to do it, these dual decks, as they call them. And that's how I got involved, because my brother, he had a couple, and we sort of started playing with them, and we actually realised it is a really good game. A little bit of a spoiler there, it's a really good game. So I thought the best way to do a review of Magic the Gathering would just to be look at one of the dual decks. Now, the game was designed by Richard Garfield way back in 1993, and it's gone through various incarnations, and now over the last, I'd say, 10 years, it's kind of settled down to sort of what we have now as Magic the Gathering. So let's look at these decks. So it's basically what's in the box. Now, with these dual decks, you get everything you need just to dip straight in and play the game. It's as simple as that. And what you get is you get 2 different decks that are pre-built. You get one that focuses on being blessed, if you like, and has angels, and it's kind of sort of more good, if you like. That's a brilliant description. Plus you get another deck which has things like zombies in, sort of undead. It's kind of more to do with corruption, the cursed. Plus you also get 2 boxes which are really cool, actually. And again, you can put the blessed ones in this deck and the cursed ones in this deck, because they reflect, these are actually characters from each deck. So again, it's nice that they've done that, so you can just, you don't have to keep them loose, and you can obviously transport them around in these nice carrying packs. Plus, you get these really cool dice, these 20-sided dice that are Magic the Gathering branded. So each block of cards that they release, and I won't go into too much of that, but they have its own little symbol. So each year there are certain symbols that represent certain blocks of cards. As I say, it can get very complicated if you really want to get into Magic quite heavily. But these are really cool. So they've got the little icon there, and these basically are just 20-sided dice, and you will need these to count your life. So you start off, both players start off with 20, and if you get reduced to 0, you lose. Obviously, the aim of the game is to knock the opponent down to 0 so that you win. And also in the box, you get these cards here, which are called token cards. So there are various ones that the Blessed deck will use, or blessed deck I should say, and there are various ones that the cursed deck will use. So how does the game play? Well, as I say, it's a deck building game, and ordinarily if you were to build your own decks, you would choose the cards that you wanted or that you had, if you know, because you have to buy them obviously, and then you'll build your own deck. But these come pre-built, and so you can just dive straight in. Each deck is built up of 60 cards, and there are various different types of cards. So I'll just go through a few here. Let's have a look. That's an enchantment, there's some land, there's a creature, there's an artifact, we also need a sorcery, and we need, I'll show you that legendary one as well because that's a really cool card. There is also an instant, which is going to be one of these. And each deck comprises of these types of cards. So you have the same mechanics, but each deck is built differently with different creatures, different monsters, different spells, and different abilities on each card. And the decks can play very differently. So in order to explain Magic and how it works, I kind of need to explain a few of these cards. Now, what you want to do is you'll be dealing yourself 7 cards, and within those cards there should be, hopefully, some land. Now, land is mana. It's what you pay to put your spells out, to put your other cards out. Because you are planeswalkers that are actually casting spells to then attack your opponent. You're trying to damage your opponent. Now, obviously, some of your spells will damage creatures and other spells, but that doesn't actually reduce your life points. So what you need to do is you will be needing to play land in order to pay for other spells. So, for example, if I wanted to play this card, this one is an instant, and it has a 1 and a white land symbol, which means to play that card, that's a cost of 2. Now, because that 1 isn't any colour whatsoever, I still need 2 land. So if I had 2 land that I'd already played, I could pay with that and a blue, because it could be any other colour. Now, it just so happens that this deck is made up of white and blue, and I'll go through the colours in a bit. So what you would do is I could then pay that land cost, that mana cost, in order to cast this spell. Equally, cards cost different rates. So this one, I don't know how close you can see it on the camera there, but that's a 3 and then 2 white. So that's a total of 5 land. So you can't play that card unless you have 5 land that you've already played. And we'll get into the actual mechanics of each turn in a second. So that's land, that is the cost of how you cast your spells. So then we have the different spells, which are an instant. Now, an instant is a spell that you can cast either on your go or on someone else's go. It's an instant. And they're really fun to play because obviously if something happens to you and it's not your go, and if you've got the lands to play it, you can then cast it as a reaction against something, or you can cast it, not as a reaction, but you can just cast it whenever you like. So that's a very flexible one. Another card here is a sorcery. Now, sorcery is a similar thing to instant, but you can only cast it on your turn. And we'll go into kind of a few of the abilities. So each card will have a different ability about what it does. Then we have creatures. Now, there are various different types of creatures. They can be flying or they can be land-based. And again, they'll have each little ability. So this one will cost 2 of any colour land plus 2 blue land. So that's a total of 4. And again, I'll go into the creatures in a little bit more detail in a second. Plus, there are things called legendary creatures, which are, just amazing cards that are really cool. And they're normally, I think they're foiled as well. This one's a little shiny little foil, which is always exciting. And again, that has certain abilities as well. So those are your... Oh, and there's one more as well. Oh, no, there's 2 more actually. There's enchantments, and there are also artifacts. Now artifacts normally equip onto creatures or various other cards, and the same with enchantments, they kind of enchant creatures, so you can that will boost that creature. So those are the different types of cards. So the setup is you will each take your decks and you will simply shuffle them. It really is that easy. Now the token cards you just put to one side for the setup, because they're needed if something is triggered within other cards. It might say put a 2/2 zombie token into the battlefield, and then you'll just take one of the zombie tokens and you'll place it into the battlefield. It's that simple. So what you will do is you will each shuffle your decks, and then you will simply deal yourself 7 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's see if I can count. You will have your counters at 20 each, and then you will look at your cards and keep them secret. You deal them face down. Now these are secret. And then what you do is you decide who goes first. If you go first, you do not draw a card on that go, on that turn. If obviously it's a normal go, you will draw a card. So you will look at your cards, and I normally arrange them like that with the land there, then I go instant, then I go sorcery, then I go creature. It's just how I put it in my hand, just so I can keep good order. And basically, so if I was going to go first, I wouldn't draw, but I would then lay a card. Now, obviously, I can't lay anything that has a cost value, but I can lay a land. Now, if I didn't have any land, I could mulligan. You know what mulligan means? It means you can just get rid of all your cards and you put them in your discard pile, and then you will draw, well, it's not 7. As a little penalty for doing that, you draw to 6, and then you go. So if you've got, I wouldn't do that. If I've got 1 land, I probably normally mulligan then. But if I don't, I will then go, great, I've got some land, brilliant. Then I will look to see what creature I kind of want to get out, so I'm planning ahead. So 2 is the cheapest, so I will put out, say, a land. And then it will be the opposition's go. And they'll probably do the same, they'll probably have a land. If they haven't, then, you know, they should have mulliganed. And then it slowly builds up. So then, on my go again, I will draw a card. I will look at it and go, okay, cool, it's an artifact. Right, I'll use that, but not just yet. And then I'll probably lay another land, and I'll probably go for a blue, because it gives me a little bit more options further down the line. Then, now that I've got enough land or mana to actually pay for one of my cards, I can cast it. And you can cast as many cards as mana will allow. So I will then simply lay that out, and this is an instant. So I would sort of go, right, I'm going to do this. And it says exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So that would mean, if I could do this, if I had a creature out, I could exile it and then bring it back again at the end of my go. Now you might think, why would I want to do that? Well, it's all a bit too complicated to explain now, but that's just an example of how you actually get something out. So as you take it in turns, you'll be drawing cards, and you'll be then simply thinking, right, what spell can I cast? So eventually, you might be able to cast a creature. So remember, if I had, oh yeah, look, I've got enough. So I've got 2 blue and 2 other types of land. That's all that one costs, 4. Now remember, I will keep picking up cards, so hopefully, if you're getting short of land, you'll get land. If not, then you get into a bit of trouble. So with this creature, when you cast a creature, when you cast a spell, by the way, you tap it. It's what they call tapping, which means you turn it to its side to show that that has gone. You can't use that mana again that turn. Then you'll simply put your creature out, and it has what they call summoning sickness, which means it's all a bit dazed, it's all a bit hazy, so it can't actually attack anybody. But what it can do is it can still block. So obviously if it's someone else's go, it's up and ready to block. Now, just a quick thing about combat. Let's find another creature. Should we get one from another deck here? This is a zombie. Hey, we all like fighting zombies. Now, what you will do is you will look at this figure down here in the bottom corner. This says 2-1. Now, the first one, I call it attacking. I think they call it toughness. I can't remember the exact words. But the 2 is your attacking score, and 1 is your defense score here. So you will simply just pair them off and say, well, look, that one's a 2-2, that one's a 2-1. Now, when you do combat, you denote by saying, right, I'm going to declare all your attackers, because you might attack with 3 or 4 creatures, and then you tap them and you deal the damage. Then you just resolve each combat basically. So this, it kind of all happens at the same time. This deals 2 damage to this creature, to the zombie, but equally this deals 2 damage back to this flying bird. Now what would happen is, because they've both got a defense, well, one's got a defense of 2 and one's got a defense of 1, that simply means they would both die because they're getting both 2 damage. If one had a greater defense, so say that one had 3, then that would only deal 2 damage, and that one would live, but that one would die. And that is combat at its real basic. Now there are other things like flying. Now land creatures can't really defend against flying, so that one couldn't really defend against it. But then there are special abilities that may allow, or equipment that you can attach, that will then allow that to sort of block defending or become a flying creature itself. So that is, I mean, the trouble with Magic is it can get quite complex simply from all the special abilities that are on each card. But like anything, once you play it regularly, you will start to know certain mechanics. So things like flying, you just kind of instantly know. There's a term called hexproof, which means that that card cannot have any spells done to it. So you can't destroy it with an instant that says destroy a creature. So that's really where the complexity goes. So once you lay a card out, I'll just go back and finish off the turn. So you would lay a land if you can. If you can't, don't worry about it. You would then try to cast one of your other cards and put that out. Then you would, if you want to cast an instant, if you had enough mana left, you could, or a sorcery, you could. Or if you want to equip something, so you might have enough mana to equip. So if it says equip on that card, you can equip something, a creature, to give it extra powers. Then you would decide, am I going to attack? Am I not going to attack? Now obviously if the opponent hasn't got any creatures and can't defend, then your damage, if you attack, goes straight to the opponent, which is what you want. And then they would take the amount of damage. So in that case, if I was attacking with that flying bird, it's got an attack of 2. And if they didn't block, or they didn't have any creatures out and they couldn't block, or they couldn't do anything about it, they would then simply lose 2 and it would go down to 18. Obviously you start at 20. And then, once that happens, that is the end of your go. You can lay a land after combat if you haven't laid before. And then you basically, it's the opposition's go. Now once it's back your go, you simply reset any tapped cards. Again though, unless there's some sort of curse on it or some sort of ability that says you can't tap this now. Sometimes that happens. Then you would just simply reset your land, you will draw another card into your hand, and you would go again. And that kind of, I know it kind of seems a bit rushed in some respects, because, you know, it's a big game. The main mechanics are all about the actual abilities, and there are so many of them that I just couldn't possibly go through all of them. Now, this game is amazing. I said that right at the beginning. It is brilliant. It's quick. Once you learn it, the actual mechanics, the actual turn is not too bad. You do also get in the box a real quick overview of how to play it. What I would recommend is you'll probably, and we needed to, look stuff up online to help you out. There are loads of forums out there where people have said, what about this? And here's a little tip. Type in the actual title of the card, the name of the card, because people will also have questioned what you're questioning if something isn't 100% clear. On the whole, they've done a pretty good job of explaining what it is. There are probably, I haven't quite looked, but I'm pretty sure there are full details about everything, about the tap stage, about the combat stage on their actual website. So this game though really is good. Once you get it down, you can play these games really quickly. There's a lot of fun. It really feels like you're some sort of wizard, a magician, that you're casting these spells. And of course there are bigger creatures in there that cost more to get out, and they're big beasts, and they might have a toughness of, you know, 7 or 8. And there are also different colours. Now this is a blue and white deck. If you're building your own, you could do multiple colours. You can just build a deck that's single. And this is just an example. This is a holiday gift book set. that was very kindly bought for me by a good friend of mine, Adrian. So hello, Adrian. He's massively in kicking off. Hey, it's all kicking off. Just look at all the different cards you can get to build your deck. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy talk. But you know what? I started getting into building my own deck and had a brilliant time, because you're really trying to work out combinations. Once you learn about the special abilities and what things do, you can then do combos. So you can go, well, if I lay that card, then that card can come into effect, which means that card could come into effect, and you can start to do some really serious damage. As I say, I'm going to briefly go through what the colours do. White is all about order, equality, righteousness and healing. That's all about gaining life mainly. Blue, I've had to write these down because I can't remember it all, is all about intellect, reason, illusion, and that's about drawing additional cards and permanently taking control of the opponent's cards. Black is also about power, ambition, greed, death, corruption, and that's about destroying creatures and forcing players to discard cards from their hand, making players lose life. Then we've got red, that's about freedom, chaos, passion, creativity, but it's also about destruction, and you destroy opposing people's land, so you can reduce their mana, which means they can't get their more powerful spells out. It means sacrificing permanent resources for temporary but great power. You can play spells that directly damage creatures or players. Now, I love playing a red deck because you've got dragons in it, you've got fire, and you can just deal, there's an axe, a flaming axe, that you deal 5 damage direct to the player. You've got green, it's all about life and nature and reality and instinct, and that's mainly about creatures and just having these huge beasts. They all sort of live in this jungle, and they're sort of fantastical, weird beasts that just trample all over the place and are really, really strong. And again, I quite like the green deck. So you can build decks that have different flavours to them. And it's the sort of game that you can really, really immerse yourself in. And there's lots of accessories as well, as you can see. I've got a playing mat. There's loads of different designs of playing mats. They're really cool. The artwork is fantastic on pretty much every card. It's a game that you actually experience, you live it. And it's one of these games, because you can build your own deck, it's very, very addictive. And they have competition plays, it's massively popular. It's the sort of game that you probably wouldn't, once you get into, you find it difficult to sort of try to play other games because you'll be consumed by this. The downside to that is, though, that if you're trying to play with just friends casually and they've bought loads and loads of cards, they have a better chance of building a better deck, because there are little booster decks, little booster packs you can buy that are kind of, you don't know what you're going to get. If you haven't got loads of money, then you're losing the arms race, really, because you wouldn't be able to buy loads and loads of decks, cards to actually build your own decks and keep upgrading your deck, which is why this duel deck is perfect, because A, you don't have to worry about building your own deck, you just get straight into it and start playing, and they're very well balanced against each other, so you don't feel like you're going to be at disadvantage because someone's bought loads of cards and they can build a better deck than you. So I would totally recommend Magic the Gathering. It plays really quickly. There is quite a steep learning curve, but the strategy is brilliant in this. You can build your own decks. That's a lot of fun. You'll basically be living in the universe of Magic the Gathering. Totally recommend it. Magic the Gathering, this particular one, the dual decks, Blessed and Cursed. Hope you enjoyed that. As I say, it's difficult to really go into in-depth about Magic the Gathering in such a short space of time, because it can get really complex. But with these ones, you should be all right. You'll get used to the mechanics and you'll start playing it, and I'm pretty sure you'll love it. It's a huge universe, and they've got loads of backstory to it as well. They've created an actual universe that all of this happens in. They're called Planeswalkers. They've got their own backstories. It's really good fun, this one. Totally recommend it. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you're watching our other show, which is the Fantasy News Show. It goes out every Wednesday. Until next time, keep it unreal, especially if you're cursed.